Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, February 3rd, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Kim Mo-kyun. Before we get started, these are the stories we're following at the top of the hour. The number of daily COVID-19 infections in South Korea jumped back above the 400 mark as 467 new cases were reported Wednesday. After close negotiations, Iran has decided to release 19 crew members of a South Korean vessel that was detained by Iran for a month, except for the ship's captain. And the U.S. has officially declared the recent military takeover in Myanmar a coup and said it would look for ways to impose sanctions. We begin with the COVID-19 situation here in South Korea. The country reported 467 new cases on Wednesday, jumping back above the 400 mark. Of the new cases, 433 were locally transmitted and 34 were from overseas. This brings the nation's total number of cases to over 79,000. Meanwhile, as cluster infections related to religious facilities continue to occur across the nation, Prime Minister Chung Se-kyun met with related representatives yesterday and called for their cooperation in preventing the spread of COVID-19 at church gatherings. According to a study released by Israel, a country which has vaccinated more than a quarter of its population against COVID-19, less than 0.3% of its citizens showed side effects after receiving Pfizer's vaccine. In another study, the Russia-developed Sputnik V vaccine has proved to be another effective weapon in the fight against the pandemic. Our Kim Hyo-san reports.
Israel, which has one of the world's highest COVID-19 vaccination rates, says that less than 3 out of 1,000 people who received the Pfizer vaccine reported side effects. The country's health ministry disclosed detailed data on the post-inoculation side effects, hoping to provide peace of mind for many around the world who are eager to know the vaccine's impact on the body. After monitoring over 2.7 million people who received their first doses, some 6,500, or 0.25%, reported side effects. Among nearly 1.4 million people who received their second doses, some 3,600, or 0.26%, said they had side effects. The ministry explained that these side effects are shown to be similar in frequency and character to those reported from other vaccines given to the population. Russia's Sputnik V vaccine is reportedly 92% effective in protecting people from COVID-19 infection. According to a study published Tuesday in a British medical journal, last-stage clinical trial results clearly show the scientific principle of the Sputnik V vaccine has been demonstrated. Scientists also added that with this, the world has added another vaccine to join the fight against the pandemic.
It's unconditionally an epoch-making event. There are 4 vaccines in the world which published what's called the third phase of trials. Our vaccine is among 3 most effective vaccines in the world, with the effectiveness shown in the Lancet journal, 91.6%.
Many European countries are cautious with their recommendations of inoculating elderly citizens with AstraZeneca's vaccine. According to recommendations by health authorities in France and Sweden, the AstraZeneca vaccine should be prioritized for people younger than 65, while Poland has set its threshold at 60. Germany and Italy issued similar recommendations earlier, despite the fact that the EU's regulator cleared the vaccine for adults of all ages. Kim Hyo-san, Arirang News.
Japan reported on Tuesday its highest number of COVID-19 deaths since the start of the pandemic. The grim record comes as the country decided to extend the state of emergency in 10 regions, including Tokyo, which is scheduled to host the Olympics in the coming months. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
With Japan's medical system under strain due to a continued spike in cases, the country on Tuesday reported a record single-day death toll of 119. The record also came against the backdrop of 2,324 cases reported on the same day. That's the highest number of daily deaths since the country reported 113 deaths late last month. This comes as Japan on Tuesday extended its COVID-19 state of emergency in 10 of 11 areas, including Tokyo. According to Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, the measures will be in place until March 7th, as the regions have not seen a decline in cases.
In regards to the 10 prefectures that we have decided to extend the emergency, I can say that there are areas that have not seen enough decline in the number of infection cases. In addition, many areas are continuing to see strain on their hospital system. Please continue to thoroughly practice the measures we've been taking to assure we cut down on the number of infection cases.
Suga added Japan hopes to begin its mass vaccination program at the end of February. Amid the looming uncertainty over the Tokyo Olympics, Nikkei Asia reports the organizing committee says the Games could be held without spectators. The committee is looking at various scenarios and will make a decision by the end of spring. Suga didn't give a definitive answer in regards to the possibility of holding the Games without spectators, but stressed he will keep safety in mind while watching the local and international situation. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Iran has decided to release most of the crew of a South Korean oil tanker detained there, but the captain and the ship itself are still being held. The decision was made as talks continue between Seoul and Tehran over a series of issues. Our foreign affairs correspondent Yoon Jang-min reports.
Iran has decided to release 19 crew members of a South Korean vessel that was detained by Iran for a month, except for the captain. A spokesman for Iran's foreign ministry told state media Tuesday that the crew received permission to leave the country following a request by the South Korean government. Seoul's foreign ministry said the decision was reached after a phone conversation on Tuesday between South Korea's first vice foreign minister Choi Jong-gun and his Iranian counterpart Seyed Abbas Araghchi. 20 crew were on board, including 5 South Korean nationals, 11 from Myanmar, 2 from Vietnam, and 2 from Indonesia. The South Korean captain and the ship, however, were not allowed to leave due to ongoing investigations for alleged environmental pollution. In January, Iran's Islamic Revolution Guards Corps seized the South Korean oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz, citing environmental pollution, a claim for which it has provided no evidence. Seoul's vice foreign minister urged Iranian authorities to make efforts for a prompt release of the captain and the vessel, while agreeing to continue dialogue with Tehran to resolve a series of issues, including Iran's frozen assets in South Korea. Iran insists the seizure was only because of the technical issue, not because of the frozen money, but it has publicly complained over its assets frozen in South Korea that are said to be worth around $7 billion. The money was seized after former U.S. President Donald Trump withdrew from the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Choi said Seoul will promptly do what it can on its own, while at the same time communicating with Washington on matters that the South Korean government cannot do unilaterally due to the U.S. sanctions. Yoon Jang-min, Arirang News.
The U.S. has officially declared the recent military takeover in Myanmar a coup and said it would look for ways to impose sanctions. But despite global condemnation, Myanmar's army chief said the military takeover was inevitable. Our Peunji has more.
The U.S. officially declared on Tuesday that the recent military seizure of power in Myanmar was a coup.
After a review of all the facts, we have assessed that the Burmese military's actions on February 1st, having deposed the duly elected head of government, constituted a military coup d'etat.
Under U.S. law, the assessment that a coup has taken place automatically puts restrictions on assistance. The State Department said it would review ways to impose more sanctions or penalties on Myanmar's military leadership, but added that humanitarian aid would continue, including to the Rohingya Muslim minority in Myanmar, and programs that promote democracy or benefit civil society. According to Reuters, Washington has not been in direct contact with the coup leaders or the detained government leaders.
The United States will continue to work closely with our partners throughout the region and the world to support respect for democracy and the rule of law in Burma, as well as to promote accountability for those responsible for overturning Burma's democratic transition.
But despite global condemnation, the commander-in-chief said the takeover had been, quote, inevitable for the country. In the first meeting of his cabinet on Tuesday, he said the military's move was in line with the law, after the government failed to respond to claims of electoral fraud. But in Myanmar's biggest city, Yangon, people banged on pans to protest against the coup. Social media users live-streamed and posted videos of themselves and other residents on balconies of apartments, repeatedly banging on cooking pots. Some even shouting anti-coup slogans. Facebook has also banned pages linked to Myanmar military TV following the takeover. 배은지, Arirang News.
After days of protests across Russia, one of President Vladimir Putin's fiercest opponents, Alexei Navalny, was sentenced to 3.5 years in jail on Tuesday. With continued unrest expected from his supporters, Navalny's legal team promised to fight the verdict. Our Choi Jung-yun reports.
The fate of the Kremlin's most prominent critic, Alexei Navalny, has been decided. On Tuesday, a Moscow court imposed a jail term of 3.5 years based on charges of violating his parole conditions following an embezzlement trial in 2014, which Navalny claims was politically motivated. The court said he failed to check in regularly with prison authorities while he was outside the country. He had stayed in Germany to recover from a near-fatal poison attack last year and returned to Russia 2 weeks ago. He holds Russian authorities accountable and denounced Putin as a poisoner in court on Tuesday. Following the sentencing, Navalny's lawyers said they would appeal against the ruling.
We are going to appeal the ruling, and we are going to advise the Committee of Ministers of the European Council, which handles and monitors the execution of verdicts of the European Court of Human Rights, that Russia did not execute the European Court's ruling.
Navalny will only have to serve 2 years and 8 months in jail, however, as the court gave credit for about a year already served under house arrest. The decision is likely to inflame anger among Navalny's supporters as tens of thousands of Russians took to the streets over the past 2 weekends, demanding the activist's release. His allies have already called for nationwide demonstrations this weekend, referring to the court's decision as Putin's personal revenge. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called for Navalny's immediate release, as well as promising to hold Russia accountable for failing to uphold the rights of its citizens. Choi Jung-yun, Arirang News.
South Korea's largest full-service carrier, Korean Air, will offer its first international sightseeing flights beginning late February. The move comes as the aviation industry is seeing a slight increase in demand for the service amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Our Choi Min-jung has the details.
South Korea's full-service airline, Korean Air, is set to launch its first international sightseeing flights. According to the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport on Wednesday, Korean Air will offer passengers scenic flights to Japan and back without landing, starting February 27th. The special program comes 2 months after the ministry approved sightseeing air travel for international flights. Although Korean Air has been relatively cautious about launching the service due to the uncertainty in profitability and mass COVID-19 outbreaks, it has decided to follow the trend in a bid to boost revenue. On a positive note, the demand for scenic flights has increased in the past month. Despite the number of passengers in January decreasing to some 1,200 or by 20% on month, the average percentage of people availing of the flights has increased by 26 percentage points to 75%. The increase takes into consideration the number of sightseers allowed, excluding empty seats for social distancing. The ministry has also allowed more scenic flights in February with a total of 23 granted approval. This is almost double the amount permitted last month. Flights to nowhere were first offered to ordinary citizens from last October for domestic air routes. And beginning December 2020, international flights were opened with duty-free shopping available for passengers as well. With the addition of Korean Air, the competition between low-cost and full-service airlines is expected to continue to heat up. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Good morning. It's Ipchun today, the beginning of spring according to season terms, but it feels nothing like spring today. Along with cold wave alerts, we have more snow in store from this evening. The capital and the west of Gangwon-do province will start to see snow from around 6 p.m., gradually spreading to the rest of the country through early tomorrow. In fact, preliminary heavy snow advisories have been issued in central parts of the country. Seoul and its surrounding regions and north of Chungcheongbuk-do province could see up to 10 centimeters of heavy snowfall, while parts of Gangwon-do province could get up to 15 centimeters along with strong winds today. But daily highs will be 4 to 6 degrees milder than yesterday, going into positive territory in most parts of the country. Tomorrow morning will be another bone-chilling one, so roads and sidewalks will cause headaches again. Then starting Friday, we can expect much more bearable temperatures. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's a wrap for us at the hour on Arirang News. We'll be back with more of the day's headlines at noon Korea time, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching and goodbye.